Radiating from the heart of America and stretching from coast to coast and border to border, welcome to On Radio, the wireless industry's weekly download coming straight from the builders and newsmakers of everything wireless. Your host is Jim Tracy, and this is On Radio.
Now, speaking of technology, one of the things that we saw at the recent show, and it's just on the creeping leading edge, is the powered ascenders.
Yep.
And now you've got people saying, hey, you rough old, tough old tower climber, we're going to change dynamically the way that you do your job. Tell us about the path with powered ascenders.
Sure. Yeah, it's like anything. It's a shiny new object that's out there that we really, with anything, we want to look at something, break it down and say, okay, is this something that we can utilize, or let's ensure we do our due diligence to make sure if we are going to implement something it is safe. So what we look at is back to standards, right? Right now, there is no standard on a power ascender. So we don't know, similar to like what Z359 is for fall protection, there is no standard for power ascenders. So we only purely relying on manufacturers testing their internal testing procedures right now to validate, verify that this is good for being able to have, individuals ride up and down. So that doesn't exist. We did write a white paper in the industry on power ascenders, and that's out now, but to give guidance. And so they are looking at developing standards for that. So that's one thing we look at. Two is, I think they have their place. Once, we figure out kind of what those standards look like, there are some difficult access site that we might historically run like a spider basket inside of a water tank or whatever it is. But from a day-to-day perspective, I think it might actually do more harm than good when it comes to ergonomics and actually, climbing a structure. I think of us as industrial athletes, right? Our men and women that are out in the field, they really are athletes. So, we should be stretching just like an athlete does. But then if you don't practice, you're going to probably be more susceptible to injuries and whatnot. And so if they are no longer climbing and now all of a sudden don't have a power descender and have to climb, that could be a negative thing too. But like I said, with anything, we want to make sure we are doing our due diligence, look at it. If there's a home for it and a fit for it, and it's a value add, we absolutely want to incorporate things.
Best case, use it in best case. And it reminds me a little bit of aviation. One of the biggest problems in aviation right now is that people don't know how to fly airplanes. And people scratch their head. What do you mean? You're a pilot. You got to know how to fly an airplane. Actually, there's such a reliance upon technology with GPS and with autopilots that are 3-axis autopilots. You just punch it in and the plane takes you to Cleveland. The pilot does it. And that's awesome because that eliminates a lot of mistakes until it doesn't. And,
right.
And it really is a concern, a huge concern in the aviation business right now, because pilots don't have the same old stick and rudder skills, just like climbers. If they rely only on ascenders, all of a sudden the muscle memory that we developed as youth doesn't come into play. So I'm all for making technology work for us. But technology is a wonderful slave, but it's a terrible master.
Yeah. So I want to use the analogy of Top Gun, right? That's the whole reason why they started Top Gun from a pilot standpoint was the lost art of dogfighting, right?
Yep.
Same deal there.
For sure.
So, and our guys, I think of our guys as Top Gun, the men and women out there.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are. And they're bad to the bone. So anyway, new techno stuff that's going to be out on the curb, out in the small cells, in the specifically small cells, and a little bit to DAS, but mostly small cells. Especially we're talking about autonomous cars and things like that. That changes the demographic of our workforce really, because you no longer have to be as physically capable of climbing, because you're only 22 feet in the air and you got a bucket truck.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, and I think we've seen that over the years. It used to be, and I probably have pictures to prove it. It used to be more of an ironworkers mentality, right? That it
Hmm.
was bolting steel and very minimal line and antenna work. And
Right.
as the G's evolve, we've just gotten more and more dependent on technology. I think about originally testing a line with an Anritsu, the old Wiltrons, and then PIM was introduced, and then fiber was introduced, and then down tilts and remote electrical tilts and just you name it. I think we're doing probably 8 different things from a testing perspective, and that comes with a big challenge of sitting behind a computer and figuring that stuff out, right? So
Yeah.
the workforce has to evolve into more a technologically advanced individual that's good with computers and good with skills and troubleshooting and figuring those things out than it is just the old school bolting up connections, right? So I think that's going to be one of the keys for the learning management system is being able to have a platform and how to's to assist instead of having 20 different people having to figure the same problem out. Let's figure it out once and share that knowledge and make it scalable.
Yeah, and scalable always involves someone having to be able to ha- Scaling always involves someone having to wear many hats because if you live in an age of specialty, then I'll do the fiber, and then you come back and do the copper, and then he comes back and does the electrical, and they come back and do the pneumatic or the drain lines, and who knows, there may be hydraulics here soon. So we have all these parties that can't cross pollinate
Yeah.
the career path. And so when we talk about LMS, it really joins those together and gives us generalists, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I grew up that way, right? When I first started in the industry, it was you went out and dug a hole, set your rebar, poured your concrete, stacked the structure, did the line and antenna, did the testing, commissioned that, right? So it was kind of a jack of all trades, but master of none. And I know that goes on, but we're not going to go there. But
Shovels, butt
um,
wrench,
yeah,
bolt,
right.
pliers, um,
Yeah. And as
prep
we
kit for
evolved,
coax.
yeah. As we evolved, I think we realized that again, working smarter, not harder, in understanding that these specialty areas, it makes more sense to specialize in a certain area because you're more efficient. You don't have near as many tools. You can be very specific in your training and your skill sets of what you need, and hone in on that craft, right? So yeah, I think our workforce has definitely changed, and we've gotten very specific, um, and we're seeing that across the board. I think about the all the DAS sites that we built and how
Mhm.
drastically different that is from stacking a guide tower. And I wouldn't want my guys stacking guide towers to necessarily come in inside a building and run structured cabling and integrating and implementing. And so yeah, we've evolved, I think, as an industry and for sure technicians.
But there's basics that everybody still got to know. You still got to know if a split washer looks loose or if a bolt doesn't look tight and what a torque wrench is and which end of that torque
Yeah.
wrench to put on the head of you put it
Yeah.
on the bolt or do you put it on the nut? I mean, there's
Yeah.
things that our training program and our training efficacy has kind of bypassed. And I think we need to go back and make sure there are some of those people who are generalists that are actually populating the brains of these folks that are coming out with all the really cool techie stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have a core skill set, and we try to cover that in some of our initial trainings. Um, the other thing is I lost my train of thought. I
So
had
one
it
of the
and it's
really
gone. So
important
we'll
parts, one
yeah,
of
let's
the
start
really
over there.
important parts about what we do in terms, especially in a young industry. This is a super young industry. I mean, they just celebrated Marty Cooper saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
it's
so
50 years since I made
yeah,
that call," and that's a young industry. And in that young industry, we have a dramatic need for mentorship because that tribal knowledge has to get passed along. How do we engage that part of the climate culture?
yeah. So mentorship is something that we actually are taking a super hard look at, and we're developing a mentorship program. There's been a few of our family member companies that have adopted it and started it, but we're going to ramp it up and really dial it in and make sure that it's a perfect program. Mentorship, uh, we've all probably benefited from mentorship even outside of a formal program and without even knowing it, right? Anytime you can be
Oh
around
yeah,
somebody and learn something, it's awesome. And so we want to take that mindset and that mentality of, showing somebody the path, learning from their mistakes, what can we do to help, and just look at a big brother big sister type program. But it's so valuable, and so it's so valuable that we feel we need to create a formal program for it to, um, give guidance on, if you want to do this is how you can do it, right? Not just saying,
yeah,
flipping a switch and say go do this, but here's how you can do it. So we're formalizing that. We're going to be rolling that out here yet this year. That's something to
awesome,
look forward to. Yeah.
awesome. I've always said that there are two methods of learning. The first is self-learning, also known as training by trauma. It is a great teacher because the lessons get embedded forever, but the tuition's really high because it's one of those things where your mentor, your dad, your grandpa, whoever it was, looked at you and said, that might hurt, and you go
Yep.
ahead anyway. Boy, you learn that lesson really well. But when you're able to pass that lesson along, see, you've already paid the tuition, so the recipient of that, should they choose to listen, gets the benefit of your prepaid tuition. Now, that can be just as an effective a teacher if you care enough to learn the lesson. So we have to really work to cross that cultural bridge to make sure that we're giving information in a way that someone who we're mentoring can hear it. And that's going to be a key, a really important key to your program of mentorship, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing with the mentorship program is not everybody's cut out to be a mentor, right? And so that's a big part of it is, you can't just say you're a mentor and go do good, right? And so
Yeah,
there comes a time where we need to give guidance and training even on what it takes to be a good mentor, so
yeah,
that we can help everybody else so it's a successful program.
yeah. Well, one of the things that comes to mind is when we mentor, it's really important that some of those cliches that have worked so well over the years get passed along, because not because they're cliche-ish, it's because they're true. And one of the things that Ryan taught me a long time ago is practice does not make perfect. If you're doing it
Yeah,
wrong and you keep practicing it, practice makes permanent. But only perfect practice makes perfect. And so we want perfect practice to add permanence, not wrong practice to make permanent. And it's
that's a
really a
lot of
great
peas.
analogy. Well, it is. It's kind of like the 7P rule, except it's about
Yeah.
not performance.
I use a
So,
similar analogy. I use a similar analogy, Jim, and I am a coach. I do a lot of coaching. I volunteer coach as much as I can because I believe in helping our youth, and I love seeing
right
those light
on.
bulbs come on. And part of my coaching is I say, practice makes better. I don't think the expectation is to ever be perfect. I think if we hold that we have to be perfect always, it sets us up for failure. But if we can practice and learn from our mistakes and learn from each other and continually get better, man, that's my goal, right?
Yeah,
That practice makes better.
yeah. Well, perfect is good enough, though. I just want you
Yeah.
to know that's a legacyism that has gone for the years and is gonna stand. It is not always achievable, but it is good enough.
Yeah, that'll work.
As you walk away from our podcast today, do you have a parting message for someone who's out there in the field climbing a tower today?
Yeah. So I think we just did our safety and training summit, and I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. I love books. He's got a lot of videos, and we shared a video about empathy and understanding that, human nature is we're trying to do our best. We're trying to do better. We're trying to help people, but we're going to make some mistakes along the way, right? And we're
Uh-huh.
still trying to figure this thing out, but our heart's in the right place. We truly love the men and women that are doing this out in the field, and that's my goal, is to always make their life easier. I'm not always going to get it right. Others aren't always going to get it right, but dang it, we're going to try our best. And if we don't succeed, again, practice, we're going to make it better. And so communication is big. Input, feedback, what's going on. I'm actually going to get out in the field a lot more this year and rub shoulders with the men and women that are doing it and see how things are going and what's going on. But my message would be communication and empathy, to each other, to your manager, to your team. So yeah, that's what I got.
And so here's our parting message for someone in the field out climbing a tower today. Number one, we hope you're not in northern Minnesota because it's kind of cold there today. But the other news is spring is on the way, so don't despair. But the big message that I heard from you is we love her, isn't it?
Not just climbers, everybody in the field, right?
Everybody.
Like we talked about earlier, it's getting to be so diverse, and it takes all of them, right? So yeah, we love our men and women in the field doing what they do, and I'm jealous. I am truly jealous of what they do. I wish I was out there with them.
All right, so we'll amend that. We love our people, and because we love our people, we're going to sign off with a simple message. Hey, thanks, Brian, for showing up. And you out there, let's choose safety today. This is Jim, and I am out.
Thanks for tuning in today, and join us every week. Tell your people to listen in and subscribe to On Radio, the voice of everything wireless.